SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Bank First is a locally owned bank that makes decisions right here at home. Local decisions, local support, and local folks who care if your kid made the team. Stop by your local Bank First branch to learn more. Bank First. Neighbors, bankers, friends. Bank First is a member FDIC and equal housing lender. Bank NMLS 454063.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, on location at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum today for the Memorial Day ceremony. Rhino safe and sound back in the SuperTalk headquarters. We'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Yeah, man, we have made it to Friday, and we may have a time change or a change in the way we adjust, or shall we say don't adjust our clocks. If the president has his way, a measure passed in the House committee, I think it's the House Energy Committee, if I'm not mistaken, House Energy and Commerce Committee voted 48-1 in favor of the Sunshine Protection Act, which would make daylight saving time permanent in this country, meaning you would not have to change your clocks twice a year. Now, here's my thoughts about that. If we're going to stay on one time, let's make it daylight saving time. I'd certainly prefer that over making standard time permanent, and so does the president, and so does the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Of course, it's got to go to the floor for a full vote and then be enacted in the Senate. So not sure what its fate is through that process. That's where I stand on the matter. But I don't know that there's a way to make everybody happy on this one, honestly, Rhino, because this means if we go to daylight saving time year-round, more daylight in the afternoon during those winter months when we switch over to standard time, that also means that it's dark at 8 o'clock in the morning during the winter. And I remember back in the 70s when we went to DST year-round. Seems like that only lasted a couple of years. And that was designed to save energy when we thought we had an energy crisis, and they were telling us that we were running out of energy. Does that sound familiar to the current day protests, Rhino, that say that data centers are going to kill everybody?
Pretty much verbatim.
Exactly. And in between that 60-year period, it was, as you've pointed out, it was acid rain and blowing holes in the ozone and
Can't
climate
forget
change.
Save the whales.
Exactly. So it's one crisis after another that the aggrieved protesters get behind. The current one, of course, is data centers. That's the big deal. We talked about that a lot yesterday, and more on that in a minute. But so I'm fine with this, except folks should know that means dark at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm actually okay with a time change. It doesn't really bother me. I think it kind of makes sense. I do like the additional daylight in the summer months. We crank it up in March, goes through, early November now, I think. Most of the year we're on daylight saving time, and I prefer that. It's also thought to be good for business, and we can debate the reasons for it with respect to farmers and daylight and all that sort of stuff. Of course, does that even matter anymore with respect to agriculture, Rhino? Because now we have these AI-powered tractors that are perfectly capable of working the land without someone in the cockpit. That's absolutely been going on for a while. Tremendous improvement there. So unlike people, machines don't quit, get sick, take vacation, complain. Just have to keep them revved up and in condition to do their job. But nonetheless, it looks like that might be a situation. By the way, in the House Energy and Commerce Committee, if this is any indication of what might happen on the floor, 48-1 in favor of the Sunshine Protection Act. Wow. And this would be implemented as part of a 5-year transportation bill. Now, there are people who say this causes sleep disturbances, workplace injuries, car crashes, heart attacks. I'm not sure I'm buying all that, though. It just seems like...
Those are the same people that believe their horoscopes.
That's probably true. I had thought about that. I don't know. Just interesting. So, on the C Spire text line, good Friday morning, gentlemen. Glad to have you on this morning. The biggest question you guessed from yesterday is Andy Gibson's response to your show about irrigation. Was that taken out of context? And I'm getting to that. I'm happy to dig into that now. It completely was. And let me first say that if any way my comments were perceived as disparaging and critical of our agricultural community, I want to make a full confession and apology for that. That's not what I said and certainly wasn't my intention. And just a little background here, I was talking about the massive amount of disinformation and fear-mongering related to the issue of water consumption by data centers. You've seen people out there protesting that say they're taking all the water, we're not going to be able to eat. They're depleting the water tables, and they're producing AOC, by the way, last week. Did you see that, Rhino? She presented a jar of dirty water she says was discharged by data centers. Well, what the hell you think comes out of your toilets? I mean, if you just pulled that, it doesn't go back into the potable water supply. That's why we have lagoons and filtration systems and the like. That's just another story. But the people that are complaining about this water thing, which is complete misinformation, are aligned with AOC, just so you guys will know. So what I said was that we are not the most efficient users of water in our country, and that includes agriculture. They could stand to increase efficiencies. We all could, by the way. Agriculture consumes 72% of the water in this country, some $82 trillion gallons a year. Data centers, 17.5 billion, 0.2% of all the water consumed. With respect to our agricultural friends, I know that they have implemented, you know what they've implemented, of course, Rhino? Technology, smart technology to manage their irrigation, their systems, sensors in the soil, all kinds of new creations and inventions driven by technology, cloud services, artificial intelligence, getting better every day. In all uses of water, we could certainly improve our efficiencies. I'll give you an example. Riding down here today, there were 2 houses in my neighborhood that had the sprinklers going after yesterday's deluge. There was a large private business, a convenience store, that had them going full blast on Highway 49 on my way down, just as an example. And then in Jackson the other day, I noticed what looked like Jed Clampett in the opening theme song of Beverly Hillbillies. You know, when he shoots and up from the ground came a bubbling crude. This was bubbling potable water that was just shooting straight up into the sky, down to the ground, and into the drain. So I completely agree with the commissioner that our farmers, our agriculture community, they are good conservationists. They have to be. And they also know, and we also know, that unless they are, unless they are good stewards of the land and the assets and the natural resources that God bestowed upon us, we can't eat. I get it. And so use of water, he insinuated that I was opposed to using irrigation for agriculture. That's 100% false. I never said that. I simply said that we could all improve our use of water in to achieve more efficiencies, and that extends to the agricultural community. Every farm in America, and I wasn't just talking about Mississippi, by the way, as you recall, Rhino. I made the statement about all agriculture and all applications of water in our country, not just in our state. And by the way, it's technology that enables us to be more efficient in our use of all resources, and that includes water. So I apologize for that. I want to make that clear. That was not my intention whatsoever. I was just pointing out this ridiculous argument that, oh my gosh, the data centers are going to consume all the water. If we just improved our efficiencies a tiny bit in all uses of water, not just agriculture, but everywhere. Agriculture is the biggest opportunity because it consumes the most water. And I dare say every farm is not using all this powerful technology to manage their irrigation systems. So I apologize for that. I just wanted to get that out there. And I appreciate the commissioner for pointing this out. We're going to get him on the show next week and talk about all this. I look forward to that conversation. Toby Barker, the mayor of Hattiesburg, is coming up next. We're at the Armed Forces Museum.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, just south of Hattiesburg, actually, at Camp Shelby, the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Their Memorial Day ceremony going on right now, of course, honoring those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms in this great country. Right now, it's the mayor of Hattiesburg, nearby, Mayor Toby Barker. Mayor, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Always glad to have you here.
Yeah, man, this is, first of all, it's a fantastic facility. We have to talk about it every time we're here. Just blown away. What a precious gem this is for the state of Mississippi, honoring our heroes in uniform. Mississippi has a very rich history in service to our country in the armed forces.
Yes, and just this museum that started, decades ago with a few women keeping a few artifacts in a warehouse, and now it's become Mississippi's Armed Forces Museum, and the more artifacts they add, the more space they need, and they really do such a great job of telling the story. And if you go back, Camp Shelby itself is over 100 years old, and all of us have a parent, a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, or someone that we know that is trained here. And I was telling my kids on the way down here that their great-grandfather, my grandfather, came here in the early 40s to train for World War II, and it's part of our story as well.
Oh, wow, that's cool. So you got a bit of a connection here, and as you know, and I learned this doing the show here, was taught this. I can't remember who shared this information with us, but at one point during World War II, this was, of course, a training facility, extended all the way down to the Gulf Coast.
Absolutely. It's been such a part of the fabric of our history as a city, but also the state and the country as well. And so this summer we'll welcome tens of thousands of soldiers who are coming here to train, and they become part of the community as well while they're here. Yeah, and they visit your city, Hattiesburg, right? Many of them have never been to Mississippi. They come here to train, and they're blown away. And, of course, you guys host them, and they enjoy all that Hattiesburg has to offer. And they spend a lot of money here. And usually they have some introduction to some part of the community, and it's interesting to see how many come here to train or come here for a short enlistment and then end up retiring here because they just love the community. Yeah.
Absolutely. So give us an update. How are things going in Hattiesburg?
Well, there's always a project or two going on, and I think right now at 11 o'clock, everyone's going to be tuned to their TVs to see if Southern Miss can pull it out against Troy and make it to Saturday in the winners bracket. And so we look forward to a great announcement on Sunday, which will hopefully have us hosting a regional, and that's always a big deal. We've kind of been coined the term Baseburg, and
had a great run.
And William Carey in the NAIA World Series this year, and us hopefully hosting and a national seed, hopefully, and we'll just see how far it rides.
It's pretty neat being mayor of a city that also has a major university inside it, huh?
Well, having two major universities.
That's true,
and whether it's the largest medical school with William Carey and all the programs they have, or whether it's just the rich history and the vibe that comes with Southern Miss, it's a really neat place to be mayor of.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So talk about some of the challenges that you're grappling with right now and how you plan to address those.
Well, today we had a few inches of rain in a very flat city, so we've got a few neighborhoods that experienced some flash flooding. But going to that point, I mean, we're finishing up our ARPA MCWI projects, which we targeted almost all exclusively toward infrastructure, and then with Lieutenant Governor Hoseman and the legislature's matching grant program through MCWI, our $12.8 million federal allotment turned to over $20 million, which we've targeted toward water, sewer, stormwater especially. Yeah. One of our biggest stormwater project is a 6-acre detention area south of Lincoln Road that will eventually take about 100 structures out of the flood zone, and so we've really tried to invest in those generational projects. At the same time, at Tatum Park, we have an indoor recreation center going up that was made possible by a group of anonymous donors that gave $35 million, which will rival any of the indoor facilities that are in the Gulf South. And we always compete against Foley, Alabama for tournaments, and so our facility will be slightly bigger than theirs at 120,000 square feet of indoor space.
Oh, awesome! And
that's going to be a game changer for our sports tourism efforts.
That's totally awesome. So what did you think about the 2026 legislative session? Anything in particular that you were pushing to get across the finish line that did, or perhaps it didn't?
Well, the things we always look toward are just things that are going to, impact municipalities, impact things that we have to deal with, whether it's PERS or, some sort of preemption that keeps us from doing what we need to do for home rule. But by and large, I mean, we were able to block and tackle the things we needed to, and we'll look forward to next year. Of course, next year's going to be interesting with all the statewide races, and I think every legislator I know is running for statewide office now. But it's a matter of trying to advocate for those things that affect cities and like Hattiesburg.
Right, it totally is. But municipalities in general, one of the things you're constantly dealing with, and you just talked about, is that infrastructure. A lot of the underground water infrastructure, for example, built 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, and I think this. In how our cities have grown, and our city's about 145 years old. For a while there, people don't worry about the water, the sewer, and then you get to a point like we got in the early 2000s where we've got to start dealing with this. Yeah. And then you've got cities that are much older than us that have had these long-standing issues. And so my predecessor, Mayor Dupree, now Senator Dupree, he and the city council started taking a stab at this early, and we've expanded upon those efforts. But I can't tell you just the help that things that come from the state and federal government that are not as big ticket items in terms of the grand scheme of what they spend money on, but they are so impactful when you are able to send money directly to cities and counties, and they're able to put that money into these generational projects. Because if you go to a city and say you're going to have to pay for every water and sewer investment you have with your own water and sewer funds, rates would go through the roof, and you wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, we see it with rural water associations around us. They don't have the sewer infrastructure anymore, so they send it to our lagoons. And having help from the state and federal government, and I know we're reauthorizing the infrastructure bill of the federal government right now. I mean, it's been so game-changing for us to have programs like ARPA, MCWI, the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Gotcha. Well, that's something that municipalities are constantly concerned with, and in many cases, Mayor, you look to the state to kind of help out with some of that, as you've said. Last year, the way that whole budget process flowed, didn't get anything. This year, of course, at the end of the day, there was money that was allocated to cities, counties. How did you do there?
Yeah, so we were able to get some money for some work around Bonhomme WSF Tatum Road, which will help with this indoor recreation center that's going to be going there. We also received $700,000. We're trying to put a one-stop shop for veteran services in our downtown across from the VFW that borders our Veterans Memorial Park. And we were able to get $700,000 toward that. We need about probably twice that much. But in those situations, the city is willing to put skin in the game too if we can just get a little bit of help. And so all those direct allocations really do help cities, whether they're big like Hattiesburg or whether they're small in other rural communities.
Is the increase in the cost of fuel and just inflation that seems to be trending upward again, is that affecting your budget now?
Anything that raises cost affects our budget, and so
rhetorical question.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about like in the last couple of years, our sales tax revenues, and that's the plurality of our revenue, and we're either number 2 or number 3 in the state depending on the month. When fuel costs go up, when PERS increases happen, those all affect the bottom line. That you then have to make hard choices. Are you going to cut services, or are you going to not hire people in positions, which is a strategy that we've used over the last 8 years? Are you going to have to raise millage to pay for things? And so it really is when any sort of cost thing goes up or an unfunded mandate comes down, we have to cover that cost.
Yeah, I understand. So speaking of millage, you're aware that there's somewhat of a movement in the state and in the country to address property taxes. It's not a fun tax, I should say, that people like, but it is a primary source of revenue, certainly to counties, and then to a lesser degree to cities. School districts are the biggest beneficiary, of course, and there are folks running for governor that are talking about, we're going to cut all these property taxes. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think people say a lot of things when they're running for office, particularly people who have not had to actually run a local government. And we are the government, cities and counties, that is closest to the people. The decisions we make impact, whether it's garbage delivery or filling potholes or water and sewer rates, those things impact the regular, everyday quality of life. I have 3 text messages already this morning from people who needed their drain cleared, and so we have to go out and do those things. And if you start tying the hands of cities and counties, then where is the revenue going to come from?
Right.
And I've been in this for almost 20 years, and I realize people have to say things when they're running in competitive primaries, trying to distinguish themselves from others. But governing is a whole lot more complicated, and it really takes a different level of leadership.
I totally agree and appreciate that. I just was curious where you stood on that. It's an embedded structure. It's been around for a long time. This is how we basically fund government at the local and county level, and I'm certainly open to options to that. But if you're going to talk about reducing revenue, you better show some financial models that reflect how that would work in a budget.
That's right.
Yeah, appreciate it. Mayor Toby Barker of the great city of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We're nearby. We're at Camp Shelby today. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum for the Memorial Day ceremony. Thanks for coming on, Mayor.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Coming right back, the Element Wealth Studio at Camp Shelby.
From the Seabrook.com.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back. It's Middays, where we have relocated the Element Wealth Studio today to Camp Shelby. This is our annual visit to the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Proud to be a part of the big Memorial Day celebration. And it's always cool, Rhino, when I drive up, see all these members of our military today dressed in their familiar fatigues. And I think they just completed the big ceremony where, of course, they recognize some of those, including the families of those who gave their lives in sacrifice for our country and our freedom. So we are deeply grateful to them. And, of course, remember, this is Memorial Day. That's when we, in fact, do pay our respects to those who died in the line of duty and gave their lives for their country. That's different than Veterans Day, where we honor all those who have served in uniform in America's armed forces. And once again, guys, if you haven't been to this museum, you got to check it out, man. It is amazing. It is world class, and it's just one exhibit after another that pays tribute to Mississippians. And Mississippi has a rich history. Our people have always answered the call when it's time to serve their country, and we are deeply grateful to them for sure. So just kind of wanted to wrap up this deal that sparked quite the controversy yesterday. Certainly not my intention. I felt like the commissioner misrepresented what I said and took those comments out of context, and that's fine. We're going to get together next week and talk about that. I respect the commissioner. I think there's a mutual respect there, talking about Commissioner Andy Gibson. And in no way, shape, or form was there any intent on my part to be critical of or disparage our precious farmers. I recognize that they represent an important, the largest industry in our state. I've also talked quite a bit about the many challenges that farmers are facing, and they are real. There's no secret that there are farmers. We've had folks on the program that are in the trenches, on the ground, no pun intended, that are operating farms. We've talked to them, and we know that their concerns and their challenges are legitimate. They're real. They're facing the high cost of inputs across the board. You know, the price of diesel right now is through the roof. That wasn't expected. Those that are now buying fertilizer, they're finding that cost has gone up dramatically. The other inputs to the agricultural process, they're also on the rise. And this is a tough situation when they produce so much because they're so dang efficient, so dang productive, so good at what they do, and that floods the market. And it is a globally traded commodity, just as is oil. They have no control over that price. They get what people offer them, and often that's not enough to pay the bills. And I have concerns about this. And you know, Rhino, you've seen the myriad of reports on this. It's just the way it goes. But to a great extent, it's because of all the innovation through the years, all the new techniques, the new supplements and applicants, and again, efficient use of water, and really effective use of water, we should say, as well, is what some of this new technology does, this smart technology that is used to manage irrigation systems. All that figures in to the yields, which are just through the roof, which is a good thing in terms of production, but it's actually not a good thing in terms of the price that farmers are able to get. It's unlike other businesses. They just don't do like the McDonald's does. I use that as a simple example. Well, we're going up on the price of Big Macs, and you walk in and boom, they just change all the menus around the country. It doesn't work that way. Those guys, as well as oil producers, they're at the mercy of the market. It's arguably the most pure form of market economics we have in the country, or in farming commodities and oil, and they are traded on the open markets. So I apologize for that. If there was anything that was, I feel, taken out of context, that certainly was not my intent, and I want to extend my gratitude to those in the agricultural industry that produce the food we need to eat. And when the commissioner said that you can't eat data, I certainly understand that, sir, but that's a false choice. It's not a choice between agriculture and data. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, as the saying goes. We need both. In fact, the farmers need data, and they need technology. And the people who create technology, of course, we all need what the farmers produce. But data has become the lifeblood of organizations and businesses. It hasn't just become that. It's been that way. But the more we expand the use of information, then the more powerful and more valuable is that commodity. And that's proliferated our society, and that's a good thing. And I don't know if you guys caught the president yesterday in a little interview. I couldn't find the clip of it, Rhino, but He said we're leading the world in quantum computing and in artificial intelligence, and he was quite proud of that, as a matter of fact, and he should be. And he said we're way ahead. He says we're way ahead of China by a lot. He likes to say that a lot. He also talked about, I don't know if you saw this or not, guys, major investments that your tax dollars just made into companies who were developing quantum computing technology, something we've discussed somewhat on the show. The president yesterday discussed that. 10 companies now that the Trump administration has invested in, announced that a couple of days ago, all are involved in development of the quantum computing technology. He also held off, you probably saw this, Rhino, of signing the executive order that would require artificial intelligence, large language models, and machine learning to be approved by the federal government. He decided to hold off on that. He said that he felt this would block progress. He said that he didn't want to impede that innovation, that it's absolutely essential that we maintain our position as the global superpower and leader in this area. In fact, we would lose our status as the world's preeminent superpower if we fell behind in the development of artificial intelligence and quantum computing. He said that we have more people working than ever before in this country, and that he believes that technology being developed in quantum and AI is stimulating the creation of jobs. Also, did you know that one third of construction workers right now in this country are working on data center projects? More than half of our GDP growth is driven by technology. You take all that out of the equation, you're talking mass layoffs, and you're talking negative GDP, recession. Good news is America is on the move, and I couldn't be more excited about the American spirit in innovation. It's always led the way for this country. It's the reason we are the most powerful, the most prosperous, and it's heavily involved in these military operations as well, where we're showing the world our technical superiority in defense and weaponry, such that the message is being heard loud and clear: don't mess with the United States. Couldn't be more proud of our president for embracing this and for standing down. I had reservations, I should say, about this executive order. I always fear that we overregulate and that impedes innovation. And the president, he made the right call. He said, yeah, I'm going to hold off on that for that very reason. And then right after that, invested a couple of $1 billion in quantum computing companies, 10 to be exact. Really incredible. Thomas, you never say anything positive. Ever, ever, ever do you say anything positive. It's miserable to be you, man. Unbelievable. He's talking about the tech layoffs. There are just as many jobs being hired. They're laying off jobs that aren't needed. We should do the same thing in government, by the way. We should do a complete review of every job in government, and if artificial intelligence or technology could perform that job function, we should release them. You want to cut spending? That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Most of the spending, it goes to people. That is a policy that we should all embrace if we're serious about cutting government spending, and we should all want to make government more efficient. This is what you see happening in the private sector. And by the way, the jobs that are most at risk are what Fortune magazine, or Fortune, I should say, in their electronic newsletter this morning called the elitist jobs of accountants. And it's kind of scary, I guess, for that industry and lawyers and the like. Sometimes it's insurance executives that they may be the most subject to this. But here's what I think is going to happen. They're going to be augmented. They're going to be augmented. There's going to be a whole new class of workers that masters this technology. and is gonna have the advantage in the job market, just as will young people who have mastered use of technology. It's no different than 30 years ago. Those who had skills in Excel and Word got the job over people who didn't. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio at Camp Shelby. We've got Tommy Lofton, the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Stay with us.
Spring clean.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum in the heart of Camp Shelby. We're pleased to welcome now, it's Tommy Lofton. He, of course, is the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Tommy, good to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank y'all for being here today. It's always a pleasure to have y'all here and support our museum and support patriotism.
Yeah, and it's our pleasure and an honor to be here as well. Of course, the regular Memorial Day celebration occurred this morning, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we were quite honored. We had a very good crowd in here today, even with some of the rain threat and other things we've had today. We were honored to be able to spend a few minutes to start the weekend off the right way.
Yeah.
Remembering all of the men and women who've paid the ultimate sacrifice from our state that deserve to be remembered. And, you know, we can enjoy this weekend. We have the right and the capability to do that. And we just need to remember why we have Memorial Day and why we're able to enjoy the sales we have. And I know my kids are excited to be getting out of school today and starting their summer off. And I think, again, that's all good, and that's good to celebrate, but we need to just remember all of these freedoms that we have do come at a very high price, and it's important that we take time to reflect on that. So we picked Friday to start the weekend off right, so that by the time we get to Memorial Day, we are well reminded in what that holiday really means.
Give us an update. What's going on here at the museum?
We've been quite busy lately, especially with school groups in the last few weeks, getting in those last-minute field trips. But if you were in the room with us today, you would be able to tell that it's a little bit chilly in the museum right now. Our boiler systems, unfortunately, have reached their limit after about 30 years, and multiple Band-Aids and patches there, if you will. So we're in the process of actually getting ready to completely improve and renovate our HVAC and boiler system and getting new controls and everything else. So, and obviously for a museum that's important because you want to have great climate control for the artifacts and also for the people that come to visit the museum. So you will see here in the coming weeks we will actually be closing down for a brief time to be able to safely remove some of the items that we have that no longer function and be able to put new items in. So next time you're here, I promise it'll be a little bit warmer than it is in the room right now.
Well, I'm just glad it's not January outside, because that would make it probably unbearable in here today. So
exactly.
All right. So, any new exhibits you need to talk?
So we haven't put anything new on just yet because we know we're in the process of removing these items temporarily for a climate-controlled space. But we are in the process of designing new exhibits as we reopen. We actually have some new exhibits that we're going to release on Mississippians who were the first to sign up after Pearl Harbor. We've got some things related to that. We have some new artifacts like training rifles and other things from World War I and World War II we'll be able to put out on display, and quite a few other stories and things that we're looking forward to telling. It's important, obviously, that we talk about events and dates and history, but for us, what we find is telling the story of Mississippians helps make that connection for individuals who come through here, and that's to me the impact. So we'll be doing some pretty significant exhibits as we reopen, and into the holidays we have some plans to even do some things for Thanksgiving and Christmas as well.
Oh, okay.
As special exhibits.
Okay. So any Gold Star families on hand today?
We did, actually. We had a local couple here, the Scardinos, who were extremely supportive of our museum and faithful to our events here, and we were quite honored to have them here today. They helped Colonel Sullivan and General Thomas here with placing the wreath at our Gold Star Family's monument, and it was an honor for us to take some time to recognize them especially. They're the ones who deserve that. And for those who are watching or listening and aren't familiar with Gold Stars, the concept started in World War I. Place a prominent in a prominent location or window of your home a blue star for every service member in your household. If that individual were to die while in service, that blue star became gold, and that would signify to folks that you've lost a loved one in service.
Okay.
And so that tradition carried us especially into World War II, and it's something that still continues today. And so, yes, we lose and have lost men and women into in service to our state and our country, but it's important we also don't forget the family members they leave behind, the parents, the grandparents, the siblings, the spouses, and children especially. So, and a friend of our museum was very good at that. We unfortunately lost in the last 2 weeks now almost Dan Fordyce.
Yeah.
And he was someone that I worked closely with, who reminded me constantly we need to remember those who are fallen, and he's somebody we can talk about a little bit more later on as well.
And of course, died doing what he loved to do, was fly his vintage P-51 Mustang. Right.
So let's remember him this Memorial Day weekend too.
Thanks for pointing that out. Agreed.
He was a military veteran as well.
A great Mississippian, a great American, no doubt about it.
He was.
Sorely missed for sure. So, all right. Well, we appreciate you coming on. We're going to talk to you again later on in the program. Tommy Lofton, he is the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. That's where we are right now at Camp Shelby, just south of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We're here for the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum Memorial Day ceremony. We're taking a break for Fox News and SuperTalk News. We're coming back with more. Stay with us.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Middays from the Element Well studio, which has been relocated to Camp Shelby, just south of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We're here for the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum Memorial Day ceremony on this
Friday, y'all.
We're pleased to welcome now Colonel Ashley Sullivan. He's the post commander of Camp Shelby. Colonel, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for having us here today.
So you had the ceremony this morning. Talk to us about that. Always a solemn event, but so meaningful and so appropriate.
It is. So, the Camp Shelby Armed Forces Museum, what a better venue to have a Memorial Day ceremony. I was just actually walking around the museum myself, and I'm standing there in front of the UH-1 Huey, which I think I was one of the last guys in Mississippi to get qualified for, and looking at, kind of looking at a medevac operation and thinking about
my favorite exhibit, by the way.
Oh, great!
It's my favorite exhibit. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've taken photos in front of it before because it reminds me of my childhood in Vietnam. Yeah, the Huey was the workhorse.
That's right. That's right. And watching, you get to see in that exhibit the soldiers helping their brethren, but to know, a Memorial Day that some of those didn't make it back home alive to their families. We bring our service members home, everything that we can do to bring them back home, to lay them to rest, but to know the ultimate sacrifice that they gave to us and the futures that they gave up is just an incredible weight to this day, but gives us also the opportunity to really remember them and focus on them and their families as we go forward into this Memorial Day weekend.
So perfectly curated. is that exhibit. I mean, it just looks exactly like all the photos you've seen, all the footage you've seen of Pewee operations where they're evacuating the wounded from an LZ. It looks just like it, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. It does.
It's perfect.
It does. It captures all the different elements there. Having one on board and one coming on board, and having each other take care of each other as they're lifting them out of there to safety.
Yeah, and it's a reflection of America, because if you think about it, you're in a war, and war's violent. You can't ignore that. But Americans love Americans, and they're going to make sure they take care of their brethren, as you say.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what that is.
We want to continue just to invite everyone to come by here. Tommy and the staff here at the Armed Forces Museum do such a great job with these exhibits, but also the knowledge that they will impart upon you is outstanding. So just glad to have this event today and all the guests that we were able to welcome on to Camp Shelby.
And we should point out this museum dedicated to Mississippians who served in America's armed forces, and we have an incredibly rich history in that arena.
We absolutely do.
It's incredible. Mississippians heed the call. They serve their country. Speaking of serving their country, you got a bunch of them coming in pretty soon here, don't you?
I do.
Tell us about that.
So here we are. We're in the throes of annual training. We've had some of our own Mississippians on the ground recently with the 155th Armored Brigade Combat Team, the 185th, the Aviation Brigade that I came from. We've got the 184th here now, and some Louisiana Guardsmen were here. But in the future, coming up here in June, we're going to have the most service members here on ground at Camp Shelby that we've had since World War II. So we are looking forward to being their host and really helping to push their training kind of past their comfort zone and get them ready as they move into future years and as they're progressing through kind of their readiness levels.
Colonel, talk about who comes here, who gets deployed here for that training, and what sort of training do they undergo?
So for this group that we're talking about specifically right now, we've got reservists, and they're from across the nation. They're coming in here. What we are is we're kind of an extension of the JRTC out at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And the concept is that we are that core rear area where they're really working on logistics, and then they take all of that equipment and stuff that they're going to bring in from the Port of Gulfport. So we're going to have the Port of Gulfport incorporated in this, push it up to Camp Shelby. There's going to be this large element here that's going to get all that ready, and then they're going to push it forward over to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where the ground fight, if you will, is taking place. So this is a great exercise, but it shows that distributed operations, which is what you get on the battlefield, right? Here at Camp Shelby, what we really strive to do is to have our warriors, regardless of their branch or their service, come here and get the most up-to-date and futuristic training possible. So having that distributed operation and that training conducted here will make them better prepared for what they will have to do overseas.
So, Colonel, does the fact that our active military, and I'm not sure if our National Guard is involved as well in this conflict in Iran, does that kind of change the agenda for the training?
I don't think it necessarily, if you're training specifically for a battlefront, whenever I personally deployed to Iraq, we were getting very specific training for the area that we were going in, which every one of them will focus on that. You'll get your intel updates. But these folks that are going to be coming here, they are just training for the future, right? Always trying to push that readiness level to the next degree. So that's what they're coming here to do. And it's going to stress everything down from the individual soldier that's having to, take care of a task, but all the way up to the staff guys or a colonel like myself or some commanding general that's having to work their staff and go through these processes to see how do we communicate over this distance? How are we going to push these logistic elements forward on the roadways? Luckily here we get improved roadways, but yeah, to answer your question, we absolutely have Mississippians serving abroad right now, and we really want to keep them and their family in our prayers regardless of where they are. And, Memorial Day is not Veterans Day, but we always want to make sure that we keep them in our thoughts and prayers.
Totally. We pray for them and that they return home safely, and we are deeply grateful, of course, for their service as well. Technology is changing the battlefield these days, and we've seen Lots of comments from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, our president as well. Drones are being used for all sorts of applications and creating havoc. That's kind of a good news, bad news thing, but our military is committed to maintaining superiority there.
Yeah. Well, Gerard, I can tell you, so Camp Shelby is recognized as the multi-domain center of excellence.
Okay.
And part of that embedded is one of the things that you just talked about, the unmanned aerial systems, or UAS.
Yeah.
We're also the center of excellence for that. We've been recognized, and we're great to have that. So we bring a lot of those training capabilities to the commanders, right? So a commander comes here, we're their host, we're their installation. We have all of these capabilities that if a commander wants to look at operating their unmanned aerial systems or countering unmanned aerial systems, they can come and do that here at Camp Shelby. We've got 138,000 acres of training land for them to come and operate. We strive to really push that envelope in getting all the correct permissions we've got our own airspace here that we can operate in. So we are pushing that. We recently opened up what we call the drone dome, so they can actually train indoor drone flying over at our Hagler Army Airfield. That's where the center for the UAS Center of Excellence, is. And we've got everything from, I'll tell you, one of the biggest and one of the newer items is a drone swarm. So we've got 25 drones that we can make them friendly, we can make them enemy, and they can swarm over the soldiers and really give them a look. And oh, by the way, we can actually expand that up to 100. So 100 drones can be coming at our force to let them experience what we're seeing overseas. So incredible multi-domain operations here.
I caught an interview I talked about on the show yesterday with the CEO of Lockheed Martin, talking about all the new technology that they're incorporating. They not only make aircraft, but they make missiles as well. And talking about anti-drone technology. It was just incredible, the advances being made there. Of course, these are orders from our military that they're creating for us, constantly evolving. Is it true, is it fair to say, I should say, Colonel, that a lot of this is preparing for something you hope never happens?
It's all preparing for something that we hope never happens. You don't want to have to celebrate Memorial Day, right? You don't want to have to remember the fallen, but that's what we sign up to do, and we honor their sacrifice. So absolutely, as we prepare every day, it is trying to make sure that we don't have to experience that by making all of our service members so prepared that they are ready to face anything at a moment's time, and then give them the flexibility to operate.
That's the key. A long time ago, I became a private pilot and got my instrument rating, and people would ask, what's it like learning to fly an airplane? I said, you spend about 90% of your time learning to do stuff you hope you never have to do.
Absolutely.
Flying an airplane's easy, but all this stuff you got to do if something doesn't go just right, that's what you train for, honestly. So, right. Colonel, appreciate you coming on. Thank you, sir, for your service, and of course all those that serve in the United States military, and we particularly recognize those who paid the ultimate sacrifice on this Memorial Day. Thank you, Colonel.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Colonel Ashley Sullivan, he's the post commander here at Camp Shelby. We're stepping aside for a break right now. When we come back, we've got J.T. Mitchell. He's SuperTalk's news director. He's going to give us a wrap-up about all the news from across the state of Mississippi. Stay with us.
Three families.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Now that the smoke's gone and the air is all clear, those who were right there.
We're back with you. We are, of course, at Camp Shelby at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's Memorial Day, and this is the annual Memorial Day ceremony. It was held this morning here. We're pleased to welcome now J.T. Mitchell. He's the news director for SuperTalk Mississippi News. JT, what's going on, man?
Hey, Gerard, how are you? Y'all doing okay down there?
Doing fantastic. Always good to be here at Camp Shelby and take a brief moment, of course, a little bit of time to remember and recall and pay our respects to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. We're certainly pleased at SuperTalk Mississippi, MidDays here, to be invited down to be part of this. So good to talk to the Colonel as well. Just great folks.
That's absolutely right. I want to encourage the listeners to take some time this weekend and at least just reflect on some of these people who gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And down there at the Armed Services Museum specifically, what a fantastic product.
It's incredible.
Camp Shelby in general. I recently got the chance to meet with Colonel William Henry at the National Guard headquarters in Jackson, and I knew what our military did. I knew they were doing great work, but my eyes were opened even more during that meeting. I think you and I talked about it. I did not know that Camp Shelby is larger in acreage or square miles than the entire city of Jackson.
It's massive. And I don't know if you know, during World War II, it extended all the way down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Jeez. And it's still the largest state-owned and operated field training facility in the entire U.S. I mean, we are lucky to have a place like Camp Shelby.
Camp Shelby is a critical component of our military efforts and our military operations, training those who serve our country. We are so proud that exists right here in the state of Mississippi.
Hey, did you know that Camp Shelby also trains football players?
I didn't know that. Who would that be?
Okay, so my high school coach, before we got a new one, going into my 10th grade year, and this was the first time I really had my eyes open to what our military does. He had the bright idea of us doing two-a-days, which I don't even think those are legal anymore, but two-a-days at Camp Shelby. And so Camp Shelby let us come down there. We did our practices, but they also had some of the military folks show us what their training looks like. And that is some brutal stuff. I mean, they get after it.
Yeah. And by the way, while we were talking about the size of this facility, the Colonel just showed me on his phone that it's 138,000 acres.
Yeah, like 200 square miles. It's incredible. The city of Jackson is 111 square miles.
That is just, it is incredible. It's massive. It is indeed a precious asset right here in the state of Mississippi. And we're so proud of so many people who have come through this operation, through this base, through this training, and gone on to serve our country. What a great job they do. We can't thank them enough, honestly, and especially on this Memorial Day, as you noted in the talking points you sent me. What about some of the museums offering free admission?
Yeah, so if you're one of those people out there who serves our country, we can't say thank you enough, first off, and a lot of museums are trying to say thank you as well. The Blue Star Museum program is a nationwide deal, and we have lots of museums in the state that opt in. People are different museums, from the Science Museum in Jackson, the two Mississippi museums, the Delta Blues Museum, or O'Keefe, Grammy Museum. There's a whole list. And so from now until Labor Day, you plus up to 5 family members can get in free. And that's just a small token of appreciation from our museum scene to our active military personnel.
Very cool. By the way, the Colonel just told me he's one of those football players.
He got trained.
Was trained here at Shelby. How awesome is that?
And when I was talking to Colonel Henry, he said, you know, they still love to open their doors or their facilities up to school groups or football teams or whatever it is. But that will get you ready for the season. I promise. Get a little military training in, and you will be ready for August.
So your team produces a newsletter that's top-notch. Tell the folks how they can sign up to make sure it lands in their inbox every week.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Gerard. Just go to supertalk.fm. There are plenty of options on the website. You'll see it. Sign up for our free newsletter. Just plug in your email address. We'll get it to you. We have a unique way, because everybody does a newsletter, right? Yeah. And so we try to make it unique, where we're just going to email you every Friday and catch you up on the big stories. We're not going to flood your inbox every 5 minutes. I know that gets annoying, but if you want, you can live under a rock for the first 4.5 business days. and then we will email you with what is happening. You'll be ready for every dinner party, every social event this weekend. When stuff comes up, the news naturally comes up, and my team does a great job of covering all 82 counties.
Yeah, and it's excellent. I'm looking at the current version, which I received this morning. So looks like we got a Ferris Trophy winner that's highlighted in the newsletter.
You do. And, you know, it's interesting. Brian O'Connor had a lot of guys come with him from UVA to Mississippi State. 2 of them are brothers. That is Tomas and Vidas. Now, I'm going to pause on their last name because they pronounce it differently. These 2 brothers pronounce their last name differently, but Tomas, who won the Ferris Trophy, which goes out to the best college baseball player, he pronounces it Valencius, I believe. And he's a stud. He has a 10-1 record on the mound. He is second in the SEC in strikeouts, and he's deserving of the honor. I mean, I was fortunate to be friends with Boo Ferris. He was a mentor of mine, and I know he would be proud of this kid's stats. He's a stud, and so he got the Ferris Trophy on Monday, and that's right before postseason started heating up. Of course, State is now out of the SEC tournament, but come Monday, we expect them to be a regional host site. Yeah,
I believe that's probably the case as well. So, well, congratulations to that young man for taking home the Ferris Trophy. We had little chaos, you could call it that. Maybe that's too strong a word, down at the state capitol.
I'd say it's continued chaos, right? Which one are you talking about? I mean, we're talking about...
Oh, yeah, exactly. Is creating quite the fanfare.
And this is one of those pockets in radio, and if you listen to enough radio, or in your case, or a talk jock for enough radio, there are pockets that control the conversation for various amounts of time. And I think this redistricting conversation is one of those pockets that you and I are going to be talking about for at least until maybe next April, when lawmakers gavel out of that regular session. But it is continued chaos. Mississippi has a lot of maps that could be redrawn after the recent SCOTUS decision. And we're covering it like a blanket, whether it's congressional, state Supreme Court, state House, state Senate. We're giving you the angles from all sides, what Republicans are saying, what Democrats are saying. Why are they not going ahead and redrawing congressional maps? We're covering that all. So go to supertalk.fm and read that coverage.
And it's obviously not just an issue here in Mississippi. It's a nationwide issue. It's gotten the attention across the country from the president on down.
And it's not just southern red states. Pretty much every state in the country is at least having conversations about how they can further advance their majority party with the recent ruling.
Yeah. The Neshoba County Fair, the dates have moved this year. It's going to be in late June, and the speaking schedule was published and released, I believe, yesterday. You guys got a piece on that.
Yeah, we do. So this time next month, I guess you'll be at Neshoba, and so will the SuperTalk news team. It's one of the most famous political stumps. Everybody out there knows that. Ronald Reagan was there during a presidential campaign. And things are heating up. I know it's a congressional year. You'll get to hear from the challengers against U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and Congressman Michael Guest. Notably, and this is worth noting, that Senator Hyde-Smith and Congressman Guest will not be there because they'll be in D.C. doing their jobs. We spoke to both of their teams. That is a voting period. They plan to vote that week, and so they're not going to leave D.C. for that. But you'll get to hear from all of the statewide officials, apart from Shad White. His office told us that he has some military obligations on theme with your remote today that he will have to be doing for the next couple of months. But the full schedule is right there on our website.
Yep, good stuff. And then before you go, tell the folks quick about law enforcement presence. They're intensifying it a bit over the weekend.
Yeah, just be careful this weekend. There's lots of stuff going on. Memorial Day weekend, you may be having fun with friends. If you drink, don't drive. It may be wet this weekend. Rain is in the forecast. If you're drunk and it's raining, please don't drive. just be careful. There will be more troopers on the roadways if you decide to make a bad decision. So don't.
Great advice. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, JT. JT Mitchell, SuperTalk Mississippi News Director. Appreciate it, man. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too, Gerard. Coming
right back at Camp Shelby. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum for the Memorial Day ceremony. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.com.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Everyone, it's Middays. We're at Camp Shelby today. We're actually inside the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. What an incredible place this museum is. Such an asset of enormous value to the state of Mississippi because it focuses exclusively on includes exhibitions of Mississippians who served in America's armed forces, many of whom, of course, paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And that's exactly what is going on today here at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's over now. It happened earlier this morning, a ceremony recognizing those who gave up their lives for our freedom. We're grateful, as always, for them, their families in particular, all those who served in our armed forces. That's what we take a little break for. This coming Monday, Memorial Day. I think most people out there, Rhino, listening, watching, have some connection to someone in their family somewhere along the line who served in our armed forces, but more importantly, with respect to Memorial Day, gave up their lives in their fight for our freedom. It is precious and it is unique in this country. We are the only country that was founded on a creed. And that's something we should never forget. That creed simply states that we believe our rights are bestowed upon us, our unalienable rights are bestowed upon us by our Creator. We recognize that. And those include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government's job is to protect those rights. Simple as that. Now, there's some who were protesting yesterday at the Mississippi State Capitol, protesting redistricting. They showed up at the Capitol, marched in Jackson. Speakers at the rally connected the redistricting push in our state to our history of civil rights struggles. Rhino, it just feels like the Democrats constantly want to place us in 1860 or maybe even the 1940s or 50s prior to the Civil Rights Law of 1964, failing to deliberately, I would say, ignoring the massive progress we have made in this state and in this country. In fact, I submit we've actually crossed the line in many respects. If you look at all of the benefits, all of the preferential treatment, all of the special programs in other government issued programs for sure that are only available to those who meet certain minority status criteria. We've gone across the line in many respects. And it's not just in government. It's in the private sector as well. There is a little bit of breakthrough good news on that at Harvard. You probably saw that, Rhino, where what have they done? They put a limit on the number of A's that can be issued in a class. You mean they're returning to the common sense approach of merit in grading? in abandoning grading based on one's characteristics that have nothing to do with their performance in the classroom. What a novel idea. I wonder how much of that's happening in Mississippi in our K-12 public schools. I don't know of any cases. I'm just curious. This has been great.
I guess I just have a different take on that because limiting the number of A's to combat what they're calling grade inflation is really just putting the blame on students for excelling when in fact it should be the professors dialing their curriculum if they want that result. If you teach somebody and they take a test and they make an A, but you give them a B because you've got some arbitrary number of A's you can hand out, that's discriminatory because you're going to choose who you're giving that B to if you got too many A's.
Well, let me restate. You're absolutely right. I want you to know I fully agree with you. We just should grade them objectively. That's the way we should grade.
But they don't want any accountability or responsibility for the actual professors or the administrators to impose upon the professors to, if you want less A's, make the course more difficult. They don't want to talk about that. They just want to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and blame grade inflation.
And I guess the point I was trying to make, and you know this, for a while there were a lot of colleges and institutions across this country that were requiring you've got to give preferential treatment in grading based on their race or other characteristics. That was going on. We know that. Just as there were quotas, right, in admissions or progressing into medical school, for example, and being admitted to specialized curricula and programs. So, but you're right. What I want to see it return to, and I think you would agree with me, can we just make it objective? And by the way, if the course is soppy and you're having too many A's, I believe that's a function of laziness on the part of the instructor. Just laziness and not wanting to create what would be the proper level of rigor in the course that generally results in a statistical bell curve is usually what you seek. Now, sometimes it could be that you've got really smart kids and you're a really good instructor and you've made the tests and the other performance criteria reasonably difficult, but they did well. Let it be objective and let it flow. And if it looks like, you know what, maybe I need to make this a little harder, well, then do so. Just simple as that. Why does everything always have to have the identity feature to it, I guess, is what bothers me about it. And so going from, hey, you got to give this many A's to you shouldn't is a step in the right direction. But I think your point is let's just make it totally objective. And that's what I agree it should be. And that's what real life should be in the private sector as well. And it typically is. But it's interesting development there, I would say. Have you seen this audio that's been released of Apollo 12 where they're describing mysterious streaks of life revealed in some of these declassified UFO files?
Yeah, that came out in the first tranche of releases, a week or two ago now.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where at the time NASA wrote it off as ice or something coming off of the ship or paint flaking off. But upon inspecting the artifacts from the mission and looking over the transcripts, it doesn't quite match up, so it got put in the UFO files.
Okay. Well, I wasn't aware of that. But I'm glad you cleared. I didn't know it was part of the first batch because it seems like it's just hitting the news cycle.
Well,
and
the
that's where
second
I got
batch
it
came
from,
out today, so there's a lot more
I
attention
got
being
you.
paid to the first batch again, and the second batch is getting filtered through, and there's footage from Syria and footage from North America, and I haven't even had time to go through all of it. It's going to be interesting as they slow walk all of this information out because you're going to have a lot of stuff that they can't conclusively determine what it was, and because of that, it just gets lumped in these files, and It kind of depends on where you fall on the tinfoil hat gradient as to whether or not you think that's nefarious. They're trying to stuff the boxes with all these useless files that they know aren't really UFOs, and then you got people that are going, well, no, this is what UFO videos usually are. It's just, it looks an awful lot like a balloon, but we can't confirm it's a balloon, so we don't know, so it's unidentified, and it gets in the UFO file.
1969, by the way, Apollo 12. And the crew in their post-mission debrief, it was their medical debrief, it turns out, that the astronauts detailed how they experienced crazy flashes despite having their eyes closed. They were sleeping, is what they say. This is bizarre. Quote, the astronauts each reported that these experiences occurred in the dark as they tried to sleep. That's actually a description on the Department of Defense's dedicated UFO site. How about that? Astronauts Pete Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean, 1969. It's amazing that we hadn't heard about this until now.
Well, we have, but there were just different explanations, and now those explanations are being questioned. Like the explanation for flashes in their eyesight with their eyes closed was basically just boiled down to, well, yeah, that's the radiation of space. The shielding wasn't good enough. But now they've gone back and they're like, the shielding should have been good enough, so what's really going on here?
There's more to this, don't you think? More we don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's coming out. That's going to be pretty cool. We're stepping aside for a break. We got another segment in this hour of Middays from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's Memorial Day, and they have an annual ceremony where they honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, as all Americans should. Coming right back.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays once again from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum in the heart of Camp Shelby, just south of the hub city of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I got my wire tied up around my mic there. There we go. We are always pleased to be here for the Memorial Day ceremonies honoring those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. I find this UFO stuff, Rhino, kind of fascinating. I just remember in the 60s there was so much discussion about this, and that, of course, I think a lot of that was because the space program was really materializing, and Americans were just fascinated with space travel, and of course the first manned space flight all the way up to landing on the moon in that decade. And of course that also Rhino spawned lots of television shows, series, primetime television shows related to space. One that most people from that era remember, of course, Lost in Space. That was always one you look forward to every week. The great Dr. Smith, Zachary Smith, he was quite the character. But well done program, and I think I have a collection of CDs somewhere I bought a long time ago of all the old Lost in Space episodes. Those are pretty cool and really pretty creative for their day, I would say. But I think there's going to be a lot more come out on all this, and we're probably going to be shocked at a lot of it.
Well, in fairness, also, you had to be creative at that point in time if you were going to do anything science fiction, because the technology to pull off the stories of science fiction wasn't quite up to snuff.
No, you're totally right. And the technology didn't exist to create lots of the scenes and the characters and some of the other action, of course, they did pretty good. You'll have to admit that.
I mean, nowadays, if you want your main character of your movie or TV show to go to an alien planet, you just stick them in a room that's painted green and use a computer to superimpose the digital recreation of your imagination of an alien planet.
Totally true. And as you know, there are many in this country that believe that the lunar landing was fully staged using such techniques and technology.
Except the people that actually know how to use those techniques and technology, like the Mythbusters, proved that it didn't happen that way. That they really
exactly.
didn't. Like, those dudes have decades of special effects experience working in movies, TV, all that kind of stuff, and they tried. They did their level best to try to spoof the moon landing with technology decades past what they had in the 60s, and they couldn't pull it off.
It's kind of neat, though, to talk to people, I should say. It's a combination of entertaining and frustrating when you talk to folks. And man, it's like you say, they've got kind of a story of just a myriad of points they make. They've got it memorized. Some of these non-believers that we actually went to the moon, but you're right. They're all the refuting information associated with that. Like, one of them, as I recall, is that they say it didn't happen because there are no shadows or something. Do you know what I'm talking about there, Rhino? I think you and I went down a rabbit hole after the show one day and started looking at that. They say, well, there's pictures here where they show that there are no shadows, or the shadows going in a wrong direction or something like that, and it couldn't possibly be that way given the sun's position related to the moon. And that's been like totally debunked, has it not? All that stuff.
Yeah, because they're basing their opinions and theories on a rudimentary understanding of the way light works, and not an advanced understanding where, yes, the brightest light is going in a straight line. If it hits a flat surface, it will reflect somewhat. If it hits a textured surface, it will reflect in all kinds of different directions.
Yeah.
And guess what the color of the moon is? Light gray. Light gray is a pretty reflective color.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point, though.
It's the whole reason you can see it.
I'm not.
The light from the sun on the other
something.
side of the earth is reflecting off the surface and bouncing back to you.
But that's correct. You're familiar with that, aren't you? That's one of the arguments that they make.
Like the picture of Neil Armstrong should just be all blacked out because they couldn't possibly see him in the shadow because of the brightness of the sun. And yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. It feels like some people just do that stuff for they get some sort of pleasure out of it. I don't know what it is exactly, but just join in the rest of all the folks, along with all the folks that seem to think that is the case. You know, I hadn't talked about it today, but we had the school choice forum last night down at the Sunkist Country Club in Biloxi. Had a very large group of panelists, both for and against the implementation of education freedom in Mississippi. We'll touch on that after the break here. It's top of the hour. Spend a couple of minutes on that. When we come back after Fox News and SuperTalk News, once again, we're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. It's Memorial Day.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply. And look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio that's located today down at Camp Shelby. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum for the Memorial Day of ceremony. Thanks so much for joining us on this
Friday, y'all.
All right, so this hot off the press, Rhino, check it out. Tulsi Gabbard, United States Director of National Intelligence, says that she's out. She has resigned her post as a member of the United States cabinet in that role. I'm not sure if I saw this coming or not, though. You always get suspicious when you don't see them for a while. They kind of disappear, and that you don't see them in the press or with the president when he's holding conferences and so forth, and just start wondering about that. But apparently, just off the news cycle today, she has resigned. Now, I'm looking at other reports that say she hadn't. So what's the truth here? What are you seeing?
It looks like there were rumors about an hour and a half ago that she had resigned, but nothing had been confirmed. And now it looks like Fox News was the first to confirm it because they're reporting on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. That's what came across my devices. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm looking at a Fox News report right now. Tulsi Gabbard is resigning from her post as Director of National Intelligence to support her husband through his battle with an extremely rare form of bone cancer. Okay, that from Fox News Digital. Wow. We certainly do wish the best for her family and in her husband's battle against cancer. Sorry to hear that for sure. I wonder if that's occupied her time is the reason that we haven't seen her a lot. And this is the first I've heard of her husband being ill. They have kept that under wraps to this point. So we certainly wish her and her husband well. I guess the president has got a couple of cabinet seats to fill at this point for permanent positions. I suspect that he will name an interim temporary position, as he has done with Attorney General Pam Bondi, of course, who was released not too long ago. That seems like forever ago now when you think about the rapid pace at which the cycles move throughout our government and all the action. It is Memorial Day, of course. The weekend is upon us, and that is always a busy travel day. And Americans are still getting in their cars despite the high price of gas. We are still expecting a whole bunch of people to drive over the weekend. In fact, they're hitting some of the household budgets are the high price of gas, but a record 45 million expected to take to the roads. Now, AAA is reporting that though folks are still driving, they love to drive and travel and get away on the Memorial Day weekend, they expect that people will not travel as far or stay as long, cutting back on the expense of travel as a result of the increased pricing. And related to the inflation that is starting to hit household budgets, you got Kroger, I think, is one that said they're going to slash some prices as a result. And there are a couple of other retailers as well that have said. I think Costco came out and said they're going to take a look at cutting some prices as well. Of course, this is going to have a negative impact on their bottom line, but this is in response to what appears to be a decline in sales, though nothing's been reported officially in their quarterly reports that I've seen. I think they're just kind of preempting and preparing for what they expect to be a rocky few months here with the price of the products they sell and that are stocked on the shelves in these stores.
Wasn't the Kroger deal
increasing
because their new CEO used to work at Walmart, and he was talking about how one of the main complaints was that Walmart can sell everything so much cheaper and that Kroger's more expensive, and that's why he was trying to lower prices?
He did. Greg Foran, he said that they intend to lower prices, quote, on thousands of products. He cited both. He said that, quote, the reality is the basket has to come down, referring, of course, to the average price shoppers spend on products they visit. But, yeah, they have done some, shall we say, undercover shopping. Not that they don't have access to all that information, but they have noted that Walmart's by the way, I think a bigger seller of groceries, if I'm not mistaken, Rhino, than Kroger is, which is dedicated to the grocery business. At Walmart, it's part of their business, but they've expanded that so significantly, has Walmart, that, if I'm not mistaken, they may be the nation's largest grocer. And yes, of course, consistent with their model of selling for less, as the great Sam Walton said, the Kroger is responding. So that's what good old-fashioned competition does. I think it's a combination of that, because Walmart's actually issued warnings. You've seen that this week, issued warnings that inflation is causing them concerns, because their observation and analysis of shoppers is that they're looking for better deals and they're holding off on spending, that they just simply don't have as much disposable income to spend in their stores. And to a great extent, that's because they're having to spend it on gas and they're having to stretch their dollars. And so that is a concern. But yeah, Walmart, Costco have certainly eaten at the big grocer Kroger's market share, and that is driving them to cut prices. 2.3% is what Kroger announced. Actually, I take that back. That number applies to their stock. It fell 2.3% after they announced they're going to be going around to the stores and reducing pricing. Of course, right these days, that's just changing some data in your central catalog that is accessed by all the stores' retail point-of-sale systems using cloud technologies and data centers. Sorry, guys, just had to get that one in there. So, interesting news, though, coming from these big retailers. Walmart said also that it could be entitled to some tariff refunds, as much as 0.5% of U.S. annual sales. That's $2.4 billion. So they say they're already receiving refunds from tariffs, that according to the CFO, John David Rainey, of America's largest retailer, and of course one of America's largest companies in terms of top-line revenue. Honestly, not terribly profitable on the bottom line, just as a percentage of their revenue, net profit, net operating income percentage. Certainly nowhere in the league with NVIDIA, who reported after the bell on Wednesday and just had a blowout, and that is causing markets to, last I checked, were trending upward. It's amazing that investors are kind of shaking off what's going on in Iran and this rather sticky inflation, that they're just proceeding, believing in this technology economy. The AI trade's still alive and well. And how could it not be after Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, announced their quarterly report with a massive $53 billion net income for the quarter. $53 billion operating profit. Net income was $58 billion. So there's some other non-operating gains that they had that fall below the line of net income from operations. Impressive quarter. I still believe that exceeds the largest quarterly net profit ever generated by a public company in this country. That's Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. When was that? Like 2013, I think, when they were just over $50 billion. Of course, if you adjusted that for inflation, that would still top the list. But nonetheless, man, this is an incredible. That means, and I said it on the show before, I thought that, honestly, that NVIDIA would be the first company in our history to generate $200 billion of net income in a single year. And what Jensen Huang says is they cannot make chips fast enough based on the demand. And that's even in the face of some stiff competition from some of the other chip makers, Micron, Intel, Google as well, with their Tensor processing units. Just incredible. Appreciate you playing the patriotic music there for us, Rhino. That's because we're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. Memorial Day this Monday. Don't forget, folks, all those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.
Just hearing the word
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio that's at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum for Memorial Day. We come down here every year. We're privileged to be invited to host the show from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. And right outside our doors here in the auditorium earlier today, a ceremony was held honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And this museum is incredible. A precious gem and a very valuable asset to the state of Mississippi because it honors all those who served, or not all those, but certainly specific members, but then really I guess you could say all those who served in Mississippi, from Mississippi, that served in our armed forces. I think it's fair to say that it is in honor of all of them. Certain exhibits, of course, are curated to recognize certain members of the military and highlights their service in the armed forces. And we appreciate that, as always, of course. So Thompson Greenwood asks, is the new Fed chair going to cut rates? You know, right now, the futures markets show the Fed increasing rates, a complete turnaround from what was thought earlier in the year. But of course, earlier in the year, we weren't at war and we didn't have this spike in the price of fuel, which is driving inflation. And I don't think it would be something on the table for the Fed, that is to cut rates this year, though I sure would like to see that. I think that would be good for the economy. And of course, the high rates are making it difficult, if not impossible, for many people in our country to own a home, to purchase a home. That's causing a bit of a problem. On the C Spire text line, War of the Worlds caused a big fear of Martians and aliens invading Earth, too. Yeah, that's probably true, but there was a series of movies, that's right, that were all produced during that era, and most of them were a little on the dark side, I would say.
Well, War of the Worlds was a radio drama.
That's right. I remember that. But
read by George Orwell.
Okay, so weren't there reports of like people jumping out of their windows and stuff like that because they were listening on their big console system radios?
I don't remember them jumping out of windows, but I do remember there was an outbreak of calls to the police, to government officials, and to the radio station because they thought it was real. Yeah, so you're right. I misinterpreted that. I was thinking about the long list of movies made during that era that had all kind of crazy stuff. I don't remember the titles of them, but like The Last Human on the Earth, there was some movie about that. Yeah, and then, of course, little later, but you had Planet of the Apes and the whole series of the Planet of the Apes and Charlton Heston starring in that. Great acting, I thought. But you had some of these series. I guess the big one I remember is Lost in Space from that time period. And then, of course, you had all the monster shows too, right? With the Addams Family comedy and the Munsters. Oh, yeah.
Robert and Brandon says, why are retailers getting a refund of tariffs? Does anyone believe that they didn't pass those tariffs charged on to the end user, their customers? It's just the way it works. I hear you, Robert, and the problem is there's really no way to determine that. You know, if a price change is made, how do you say, well, that was explicitly directly due to tariffs? So I think that's a bit of a problem, but that's the way the system works. And the fact that we had the tariffs and now they're being reversed and then refunds have been approved is just a big mess, to be honest with you. Trey in Vaden says, I believe they were on the moon, but Neil wasn't the first person to step on the moon. Someone standing on the moon had to take his picture stepping off the ladder onto the moon. There's an explanation for that, Rhino, but I don't remember it. What was that?
Yeah, there was a miniaturized not skeletonized. It wasn't skeletonized, but it was definitely stripped down. It was a camera built by, I believe it was Westinghouse, that they miniaturized the technology for black and white TV cameras and mounted it on some arm that was going to lower by a lever when Neil Armstrong got to the ladder. So he pulls the lever, the thing folds down. And I remember reading about this at one point in time because I remember they mounted the camera upside down because it was easier to mount that way. And it was at some odd angle, like it was off kilter. So they had to correct that once the image got back to Earth, but they didn't send the image back to Earth in the same format that TV cameras usually used at the time. So they sent the imaging back directly to a monitor and then recorded that monitor. And they had several different feeds because it couldn't come in to the mission control. That wasn't close enough to the moon for it to get there. It had to be, I want to say it was Australia and the West Coast. There were different feeds coming from the moon picking it up. And that was what was broadcast on TV for the millions of people that watched.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I have to share a little bit of a connection to the cameras that were used in the mission. And it concerns my cousin, an electrical engineer. He led the team at Westinghouse. Longtime employee of Westinghouse in the Baltimore, Catonsville, Maryland area, where Westinghouse had a big headquarters operation, and they were contracted. You don't think about Westinghouse sort of being in that business, but they were contracted by the government to construct the photographic equipment that actually traveled to the moon. And my cousin, I always call him my uncle because of the age difference, but he's actually my cousin. He led the team of engineers. He's a master's in electrical engineer guy from LSU. And he led that team that created the optical equipment. That, of course, that's rather cryptic technology, primitive technology to what we have today, but it's pretty cool. Now, on the C Spire text line, we have a question. How do you explain the flag not going up because of gravity? It was straight out like the wind was blowing it.
Yeah, because it was on a frame. If you look at the flag that was with the astronauts on Apollo 11, you have the flag pole, and then there's a little pipe above the flag that holds the top of the flag so that it would be up instead of just hanging limp.
For the image of it, because you don't want to just take a photo of it that really wouldn't have quite the same impact and
but
same
they did
appeal.
mess up with the flag placement. They placed it too close to the boosters that got them off the surface of the moon.
That's right.
And they knocked it over when they took off.
That's right. And is there not video of that?
Oh, yeah.
That shows that. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And imaging of flybys of the moon have purported to show the flag still there, just bleached in the sunlight.
Well, there's nothing there to move it, right, on the moon. So it's not like the Earth's surface with the various atmospheres and winds and all that sort of stuff. Talking about interest rates on the C Spire text line, Kevin Warsh is a follower. He's the new Fed chairman, being sworn in today, by the way, in that role. Is a follower of Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke, former Fed chair people. So a rate hike is the absolute last thing Warsh will want to do. I still say there will be at least one cut this year, if not two, of 25 basis points each. Remains to be seen, but I did see that you shared with us on May 14th, not too long ago, you thought we'd have 5 cuts between June 26 and December 27. I would expect that most of those would come in 27, and that, of course, is contingent on what happens with this war and when the price of oil falls and returns to somewhere around the level it was before we went off to war. I just don't know that Warsh is inclined to cut rates given the current inflationary environment, but we shall see for sure. Tim in Cleveland says you should check out the book entitled When Harley Was Won, Good Science Fiction. Interesting. I've heard about it, but I never have checked it out. Let's see. CC in Senatobia said these are supposedly the 4 types of aliens that have been recovered. This is an Instagram post that is a graphic depicting, can't hardly see it, 4 different types of aliens. Couldn't get it to blow up correctly. I don't know if you can read it or not.
Yeah, you got the insectoid aliens known as the mantis. You have the little gray aliens that look like the stereotypical alien called grays. You've got the reptilian aliens that look like lizard people, and you have the Nordic aliens that just look like albino people from Norway.
Okay. Oh, man, I guess we'll keep getting the feeds of more of this information.
Those are the 4 descriptions that have come from those that claim to be abducted or have had various relationships with them.
I got you. Wow. That's incredible. Jack in Jacktown says, last week I received an invoice from FedEx for $90 for something I ordered, received last November. Is that a tariff? Man, I don't know, Jack. That sounds crazy. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum.
From the Seabrook.com.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We're on Camp Shelby today. We're at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. That's because Memorial Day comes up this Monday. That is the day when we in America celebrate, recognize the sacrifice, and we give gratitude to those who pay the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. It's something that we have been doing for a long time. Now, last year I remember talking about, Rhino, the history of Memorial Day and when that got started, and unfortunately I can't recall it off the top of my head today, but that was instituted some time ago, and it is something that we have kept on the calendar since then, and appropriately and right that we should. In my belief, we really can never say thanks enough, and that's kind of where we are.
I think the reason Memorial Day history is so hard to keep in your mind is because there are competing stories that seem to get brought up just about every other year, where you have the stories from Mississippi, like the women of Columbus, who in, I believe it was 1866 or 67, laid flowers on the graves of the Civil War dead. You've got, is it Dalton, Georgia, or Columbus, Georgia? It's one of those in Georgia that had a story about, I think it was a mayor's wife having the idea for a holiday to honor the fallen.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
And then there was one in South Carolina that, I want to say it was missionaries wanted to do it. And then you had the ones out of New York and Pennsylvania. Like, every state had some semblance of a memorial after the Civil War for their fallen in the war. But it wasn't until, when was it, the 50s? The late 40s where it became a national holiday?
68 is what I'm looking at. Congress passed a Uniform Monday Holiday Act in 1968, officially declaring the last Monday in May as Memorial Day. Went into effect 1971. That's the information I'm looking at.
Yeah, so it had
right
been
now
observed for decades before that, just not officially on the governmental holiday calendar.
But you have to acknowledge that it does have its roots in the period after the Civil War, honoring fallen Union soldiers. Decoration Day, that's right. That's what it was originally called, Decoration Day. I remember that, talking about it last year. And this was just really because of the devastating losses of the Civil War. There were lots of springtime tributes that emerged to honor those who fell in the Civil War. 1868, 100 years before it became official, Major General John Logan, leader of the Union Veterans Group, Grand Army of the Republic, officially established Decoration Day. 1868 was the first national observance of Decoration Day, and it was called that because that's when citizens, townspeople, would go to the cemeteries and decorate the graves of both Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington. May 30th was likely chosen because springtime flowers would be in full bloom nationwide. That makes total sense. So, interesting. History of Memorial Day coming up this Monday. It's always a big travel day, always marks in many situations, depending on your school's calendar. It's the end of school as well, and kind of the official start of summer. And that's where we are. Meanwhile, up in Washington, the president is preparing to lose the birthright citizenship case at the Supreme Court. I don't think folks are surprised about that. He said on Thursday he figures the Supreme Court will rule against him in his attempt to block illegal immigrants' babies from getting automatic U.S. citizenship. He called the predicted outcome, quote, a disgrace. This wouldn't be a problem if Joe Biden and others even before him hadn't flung the doors wide open at the border, letting so many people in this country. And in many cases, it's with the intent of having a child that they know would be an American citizen, making that child and that household eligible for the plethora of benefits this country offers. That's exactly what's going on there. He said blocking his executive order, which restricts children born here to both migrants and temporary legal visitors, would be, quote, a disaster economically for our country. You'll have 25% of the people coming into our country coming in through birthright citizenship. That's not good. I didn't know it was 25%. And we won't have any control. They'll probably rule against me because they seem to like doing that, said the president. So they're hearing oral arguments on this later on this month. Man, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I suspect he's probably right. Also, chaos ensued, you could say, in the Capitol yesterday because the Congress is kind of cracking apart with respect to their support for the president and his agenda. There was legislation concerning ending the war in Iran and forcing that to occur, just forcing the president to end it, and I guess just to return and remove all of our forces in the region. But that the House ended up pulling a vote to halt the Iran war because they couldn't get enough Republicans to vote against it. In other words, it's the Democrats that are instigating this. They're wanting to rein in the president and end the war, and Republicans in support of the president need sufficient votes to defeat that measure. And Speaker of the House Mike Johnson at the Capitol yesterday said, yeah, we got some that aren't here and others that we haven't convinced to vote against this measure. And so they sent everybody home. And then over there in the Senate, they couldn't get enough votes again to fund what has not yet been funded in the government. And that is causing quite a ruckus in the United States Capitol as well. There are some senators that are, I guess, getting a little frisky about their relationship with the president. And some of those, of course, such as Senator Tom Tillis who's been a bit thorn in the side of the president from North Carolina, he's out of there in a short 7 months. And so that's what happens. You get a little less concerned about your political future and needing the support of the president when you know that your days are numbered. In this case, the senator is retiring, and there are some others as well. It's the usual group: Murkowski, Collins, Murkowski from Alaska, Collins from Maine, that are not in support of the president's agenda. So it's making it more difficult for the president to achieve his goals. So they stalled. The other thing that they're concerned about is this $1.8 million settlement fund that the president is looking for as restitution, you could say. Billion, my apologies, 1.8 billion. I just realized I said that wrong. Everything in the federal government is either a B or a tree. It's either or a T. It's either a billion or a trillion. Unfortunately, most of the time it's trillions. But they left town yesterday without voting on this measure. They are trying to block this settlement fund, and this would compensate what are described as Trump allies who believe they were politically persecuted. Now, I do believe that if the government essentially ruins your life, that you should be repaid by the government. You should be compensated by the government. And I do think that happened. Now, you can perhaps cross the line on that as to, well, you know, you committed some sort of act of wrongdoing, and therefore you just got to live with it. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people that get swept up in that really didn't do anything wrong, but got accused wrongly, and it did have a significant negative impact on their lives. I mean, to a point where they can't totally recover. And so the president had proposed this fund to compensate them for that, but the Republicans in the Senate aren't on board with it, so they never voted on it, and they basically packed up and left town yesterday. The other thing is they're not going to get this bill to the president's desk as he wanted, again, to fund the functions of government that have yet been funded. Mainly our ICE has not been totally funded. Our Customs and Border Patrol operations have not been totally funding. You couldn't get that through either, and the president wanted that on his desk by the end of the month. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Also, you probably know by now that the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., his eldest son, is getting married this weekend, and the president said he didn't know if he'd be able to attend the wedding. Interesting. It is time for a break here. We're once again at Camp Shelby at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. When we return, it's Tommy Lofton, the director.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. We're pleased to welcome once again Tommy Lofton. He is the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. So, Tommy, we've had a good day here. Always enjoy being here on site at this museum. As I've said throughout the show, it is such an important, a valuable, a precious asset to the state of Mississippi. The exhibits, of course, featuring the many Mississippians who served in the United States Armed Forces, some of whom paid the ultimate sacrifice, and that's what the ceremony was about this morning.
That's exactly right. You know, it's our honor to be able to feature so many different Mississippians from different time periods of service, and we have so many different types of artifacts throughout this. It's not just a bunch of helmets and guns, but a lot of our collection is actually from Mississippians who have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it's important that we not just take a day like this to set aside, but that we as a museum day to day continue their legacy. And they're not here to speak for themselves. They didn't get to come back and necessarily have long lives and things like that to contribute to society. They gave up all of that for us to be able to do what we do today, to be able to speak out how we speak, be able to vote the way we vote. And I think this weekend especially, and Monday, is one of those holidays too where I feel like as a country we can come together, regardless of political party or what we think about issues within our own state or within the United States. It's an important day for us to stop thinking about ourselves and thinking about those who actually put on the uniform and died for our state and our country.
Perfectly stated. Totally agree. Let's set aside our differences, at least for that day.
Sure.
And
we got the rest of the year to bicker.
Yeah, and let's be honest. We're able to bicker without any sort of recoil because of those freedoms that they fight to defend.
That is exactly
That's why we can have civil and uncivil debate, honestly,
exactly
is because of that. And we are certainly grateful for that. Now, explain to the folks, you've got artifacts that date back to when?
Some of our oldest go back to even the Revolutionary War era, and then we have recently been working hard to collect things from Iraq and Afghanistan and the Global War on Terror. We don't need to wait till the men and women of that war are 80 and 90 years old like we did with a lot of World War II.
Sure.
We're trying to do what we can to go ahead and honor their memory now, even if some of them that are still in uniform. We had an individual or two here today, in fact, that have already turned over some of their artifacts to us, and photographs, letters, other things as well. So it's a big goal for us. You know, this museum opened just a few weeks after 9/11. And there was no plans for 20 years plus of warfare in the Middle East and other things. We are in the process of actually trying to expand on our location and our mission by moving this museum outside onto Highway 49. And so that's a goal that thankfully our state is behind and our legislature is behind. They gave us $6 million to be able to buy up some frontage to land we owned on Highway 49, which we've done. And we're now moving forward in the process of trying to continue that mission and that goal in bringing a bigger and better museum to our state and make it what it really ought to be, to make Mississippians continue to be proud of our own veterans and our those who've paid the ultimate sacrifice from our state. And we have so many people who travel up and down 49 from other states that come through here, and they say one or two different things. Usually, I didn't realize Mississippi was so pro-military and so heavily involved in so many wars, even before statehood. And the other thing they usually say is they're impressed that it is not like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" because they seem to think of us still over here in the landmass as walking around barefoot carrying blocks of ice. But, you know, it really is. We've had folks from California and Arizona and other states come here recently, and they were just blown away by the amount of patriotism we have, how great our people have been, and how hospitable we've been as a state. And when they walk through these exhibits and see even recognizable names of people that were big in American history, not just Mississippi history, you know, we have a lot to be proud of, and I think we take it for granted as a state. And I'm hoping into the future that we can do even more with our Mississippi education system to not just include politicians and other folks, but some of our military leaders and Medal of Honor recipients and other things in our curriculum.
It's so important to preserve their legacy in this history, and you guys have done a fabulous job of just that and curating it in such a world-class fashion. Always impressed.
Get ready. There's more good things to come.
Can't wait. Tommy Lofton, he's the director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. And that's a wrap for today. Folks, didn't really get a chance to talk too much about the big school choice forum last night in Biloxi, but I'm going to dig into that when we come back on Tuesday. It's a fair amount to discuss. Well-attended event. Shout out to the Harrison County Republican Club for hosting it. Proud to be part of the panel. And I thought we did a good job of informing those in attendance of the pros and cons of the matter. You know where I stand. But that's for another day. We're out of here today. Be sure to honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the privilege of living in this country. Memorial Day this Monday. Most importantly, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.